go. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. We're going to do a program that will be a bit of a something in between where we are right now, and for those of you who have not gotten into NXDN yet, but you're interested and you want to get started, well, we'll have some information for you on that. I also want to make mention of the fact that we'll be doing another program during the afternoon track today, and that one is going to be a little more freeform. We have in the past with these programs found out that in the afternoon there are folks that have very specific questions. They have a need, or how do I do that, or I'm getting this result and how can I improve on this, that, or the next thing. So what we're going to do this afternoon, instead of having a more or less very canned and very structured presentation, we're going to be open to questions and take things as they come along. And that can be everything from how to use the radio to how to program the radio to some specific information about the weather message app. And there are some new things coming along. We'll give you a preview of that this morning. So we will get started right now with our NXDN Now presentation. And the good news is the network is larger and even more robust than it has been. NXDN continues to grow. More and more people here on the west coast of Florida are using NXDN because, like me, they may have too many years on their ears, one of the sayings that I've coined, and even with hearing aids, still too many years on the ears. And NXDN is a very crisp, clean operating environment. So NXDN, the technology, because it is digital, does make it very easy to understand. There's no snap, crackle, pop. There's no shh in the background, unless you have somebody in the background going shh. That happens occasionally. But the fact is that NXDN is, from an operating standpoint and a technical standpoint, as close to analog radio, but with so many more improvements that it really makes a nice fit for amateur radio. Now, as I said, the network is growing. It is larger than it was a year ago, than it was 2 years ago. And here is a map of the current NXDN network on the west coast of Florida. We have new repeaters. We just brought one online in Lee County, right along I-75 about a month ago. So as you go south on Interstate 75, you will have yet another repeater to take even further south, and there is some work in Lee County that is currently going on that could extend the network even further south into Collier County. To the north, Sumterville is alive and well and doing just fine. And one of the improvements that we are looking to make to the current network is to improve and shore up the coverage along the US 17 corridor in Hardy County. If you're in Hardy County, if you're driving up US 17 or across on 64, yes, you can get into the Verna repeater, you can get into the Boyette repeater, and you certainly can get into the Bartow repeater. So yes, there is coverage along US 17, but with the addition of a Hardy County repeater, it will make it almost a no-brainer. And with the vote scan capability that is built into the radio, you simply turn that on. We'll be talking about that during the presentation. And at that point, the radio figures out where you are and changes channels automatically. We do have a couple of other places that we are looking to place repeaters. There may be an opportunity in the very near future to put a repeater right in Orlando amongst all of the theme parks. And for those of us who would go over to Orlando for the day, we can take our NXDN radio, our portable, like this F2100 that I've got here in my hand, and be able to talk to anyone here in West Central Florida. So we look for that to be another giant step forward. And even though we do have some coverage in Citrus County to the north, the Skywarn spotter network in Citrus County certainly could be shored up with an NXDN repeater located someplace in Citrus County. And we're actively looking for a place where that repeater can go. So the network is alive and well, and there's more things coming to it, both seen and unseen. Now, one of the things that you are all going to be able to experience within a very short period of time are some new features in the network. We have a product that is created by one of our own, Tom Chance, K9XV, called flxNet. flxNet is, think of it as the traffic director that takes your incoming voice call or incoming data message and it distributes it wherever it needs to go. In some cases, it needs to go to all of the repeaters, while in other cases, it may only need to go to one or two, depending upon the talk group that you're using. flxNet has been with us in one way or another for the last 2 years, but Tom has spent the last 6 months rewriting flxNet from scratch, and he has built not only some exciting things that you will be able to leverage on a day-to-day basis, but he's also included a set of tools that we'll be using in administration to keep track of all of the activity, to smooth out some of the kinks that we have encountered over the past several months, and add some new features at the same time. Now, one of those features is GPS support. So if you have an NXDN radio that is capable of transmitting a GPS signal, you no longer have to turn it off. You can turn it on, set your radio to transmit on talk group 14439, and here's the big benefit. Not only will you know where you are, but anyone who has APRS.fi will also know where you are. Your GPS POSIT packet will be immediately grabbed by flxNet and sent to APRS serve, at which point it will pop up on APRS.fi and the over-the-air APRS network. Now, many of you may not realize that the NI4CE system operates 4 APRS digipeaters, one in Holiday, another in Riverview in Hillsborough County, right down the street from where we are this morning, another at our Verna site, and a 4th digipeater at Lake Placid at our site out on US 27. And of course, I've got a digipeater in Pinellas County, so if you can't hit the Riverview digipeater, you can come in through NB9X. Here forward, with the new flxNet, your APRS packet, well, I should say your GPS packet from NXDN will automatically flow to the APRS network. So if you have a special event going on, if you want to see where you are on APRS, all of that will be very possible, and very possible in the very near future. One of the other things that is coming to the new improved flxNet is dynamic talk groups. Now, how many of you have been involved with a larger group of folks and you want to have a sidebar? Or maybe you've got a situation where you want to have some one-on-one or one-on-2 or 3 time with a smaller subset of the group that you're working with. Well, if you're on the same repeater, that's not terribly difficult. But if you're over there and somebody else is over that way and you've got to use more than one repeater, well, then that becomes, at least it has been in the past, a little bit problematic. With dynamic talk groups, you and the party or parties that you want to have a sidebar with or have some more direct communication with will be able to set up a dynamic talk group that will only encompass the 1 or 2 or maybe 3 repeaters that you're currently on. So the rest of the network can continue doing what it wants to do, and in the meantime, you've basically taken a slice out of the network for whatever activity you're involved with. Now, some of this came up because Russ, N4RTD, who was mentioned a little bit earlier at the opening, and I have been doing some texting back and forth with Weather Message. Now, I'm on the repeater in Seminole. Russ usually is on the repeater in Bartow, as he lives in Polk County. Both of us do have the capability of going into the Boyette repeater from where we're at. So at that point, we'd be tying up one repeater. But if we're doing something with portable radios, I can't quite hit Boyette with a portable. Russ's signal into Boyette with a portable radio is a little bit marginal as well. Hence, why we're on Seminole and why we're on the repeater at Bartow. Well, if we are on Talk Group 1250, Talk Group 1200, we end up tying up all of the repeaters. But now with a dynamic talk group, we can essentially tie Seminole to Bartow, and it will be almost like we're on the same repeater. So there's one great benefit of having dynamic talk groups. Another improvement that we're planning with the new flxNet is multi-threaded operation. Now, this is something that you won't see, but you will certainly experience the benefit of it. flxNet right now is a single thread, which if you're into computer programming, that means that one size fits all. With multi-threaded operation, as we connect to the repeaters, we can have a smaller subset group of the repeaters connecting on a port, another subset of repeaters connecting on a different port, maybe even a third subset connecting on a third port. And so as flxNet distributes traffic, it will be a lot smoother and a lot faster. Hence, the benefit to you. And it will take some of the stress off of the single-threaded concept that we've been working with. So this is going to be, I think, a giant step forward. Now, one of the other things that is going to be incorporated in the back end with flxNet is individual component monitoring. So if at any time we want to take a look and see what's happening on a given repeater or one of the other pieces of equipment in the background that is at each repeater site, we are going to be able to monitor that, to log that very dynamically. This is going to improve uptime on the network, and with the operational dashboard and logging, right now I'm sure each of you has a question, well, how am I getting into the repeater? What's my signal strength? And in fact, I had a question like that a couple of days ago from a ham. Yeah, and wasn't quite sure why they drop out occasionally or what have you. Well, on a one-on-one basis, we do have some tools right now that we can look at that, but you can't without our help. Once the new flxNet is in place, you're going to be able to go to a website online and see just how good, or maybe not so good, your signal is into the repeater that you're trying to get into. And in the case of the ham that we were working with on Thursday, with a portable radio inside his house about 14 miles from the repeater, he was marginal, about a -107 with up to about 1.5% of bit error. That is not a great signal, and that can be problematic. Well, while we were in front of our tools, he took the antenna off of his radio, then attached the radio to an outdoor antenna, and guess what? He improved his signal by 20 dBm. So instead of a negative 107 signal, he was now at negative 87, which is a really good signal. And with that improvement in signal strength also came a significant improvement in his bit error rate. It went away. It was 0.00. So now he knows what his signal is at his location, and in order to be solid into the network, short of any other improvements at that particular repeater site, he knows what he has to do. We also know that maybe there is something that we can do to improve his signal coming in, and we're looking at that very actively right now. And one other improvement, if there happens to be a bump, a burp, a gurgle on the network, starting and restopping FlexNet is a bit of a chore. With the new tools that Tom has built into the new FlexNet, starting a new session of FlexNet will be very easy, very quick, and in fact, most people won't even know that it's happened. Now, we talked about vote scan. What is vote scan? Well, you know, if you've got a cell phone, as you go from place to place, if you've got one of these, the signal follows you. So as you move from one cell site to another site, there's a handoff, usually. It's gotten a lot better over the last number of years. And you can continue your conversation on your cell phone just fine. Well, with as many repeaters as we now have in West Central Florida, and as you go to Southwest Florida where there's more of a concentration of repeaters, vote scan becomes a very nice feature to have in your radio. Now, if you've got an ICOM NXDN radio like this 2100, or if you've got an F62 or an F4400, vote scan is built into those radios. It just becomes a matter of activating it. Also, if you have a mobile radio like an F6130D or maybe an older F6061D or the king of the hill, the F6400D, vote scan is in those radios as well. How does it work? Well, every 10 seconds, every repeater puts out a short beacon, a short transmission that your radio can lock onto. Your radio grabs that beacon, it looks at its RSSI, and it says, I can't do better than that right now, or yes, I can do better from this repeater over here as opposed to the one over here that I'm currently on. There are thresholds where your radio also will look for a better signal just because the one that you're currently at does not quite measure up or can be improved on. And we'll show you those settings in a moment. Essentially, what vote scan does is it does the channel changing for you without you having to touch the radio, which is really nice because as you're driving down the road, one of the last things you want to have to do and be distracted by is channel changing. Now, if you do have an F6400 like I've got in my car, one of the other features of that radio is you can also have customized channel change announcements. So as you press the button, even if you can't look at the screen, it'll tell you you're going to Boyette or Bartow or Lake Placid or Charlotte South, whatever the case happens to be. But if you don't have that, vote scan takes all the muss and fuss out of trying to stay on the network. It auto steers your radio automatically. And again, it's the same technology, frankly, that's used in the cell networks. To set up vote scan, you need to go to your programming software, go to the memory channel zone operations section of the software, and in the column it says zone type, instead of selecting conventional, which is what we do with most of our zones, you select voting. And then once you go into that zone with your radio, either by changing zones manually, or if you direct your radio to do that automatically on startup, once you're in that zone channel that has vote scan activated, it will automatically start the process and keep the process moving. Now, here are some settings that we have found through trial and error fit most situations. In the column and field that's listed for fast vote, a negative 85 dBm is a great metric. In the vote L2 field, a negative 95. And in the revote, a negative 100. Now, if you happen to be in an area where you have several repeaters that are relatively close by, you may want to set that revote down to, let's say, negative 112 or negative 114, which is an almost out of rope kind of situation. But we have found that in traversing the network, the negative 100 works very, very well. And then we also recommend that you use both fast vote and revote. Typically, by default, those are off. You want to make sure when you're reprogramming your radio that you set both of those settings to on. Now, in addition to the things that we've already talked about, one of the other things that we are currently working on is some technology to bring more resiliency to the network and also to keep things running when the lights go out. We recently did here in West Central Florida a simulated emergency test that simulated a power grid down situation. Well, what does that mean? That means that, well, maybe a substation went offline and caused a cascade. Maybe one of our generating stations went offline. And in fact, in the last month, we've had situations where, because of our severe drought and our wildfire situation, we've had some of those fires creep right up to the perimeter of several power substations. If they had gotten into the substation and taken them off, it would have been a while before you would have had power back at your house. Now, that's not going to affect our repeaters, because all of the NXDN repeaters here in the section are not only on emergency power, they're on generator and long-term generator backup. So the fuel tank's got to run dry before those repeaters would go off the air. The sites are covered, and they are covered for long-term. However, anytime you're dealing with a grid down situation, be it only a partial grid down or something that is truly throughout the entire area or the entire state, one of the byproducts of that grid down is likely going to be your communications that you normally would use will also be down. Your internet will be down. Any private circuits that you might have are going to be down. Chances are pretty good also that your cellular telephones may work within a cell site that may be on backup power, but all of the things that interconnect also are likely going to be down. So how do you shortstop that? Well, in our case, what we're looking at doing is building a private, operated on amateur radio frequencies, over-the-air IP network. In other words, we want to create our own wide area network to connect the dots of the repeaters in the network. That way, not only will the repeaters stay up, but the links connecting the repeaters will also stay up. If the grid goes down, we do know that we have several key repeaters that will cover West Central Florida and beyond. For example, the Verna repeater has such a wide footprint that I can get into it from my house 47 miles away. At the same time, folks in Charlotte County and even in Lee County to the south can get into Verna. And to the east, we've already tested the ability of several locations, including the Highlands County EOC, a facility similar to the one that we're in right now. Well, they can get into Verna directly. Boyette also has a huge footprint. And the Pasco repeater, with its antenna at 1,200 feet above ground level, goes out literally 45 to 50 miles in all directions. So yes, the repeaters have large footprints, and right now in a real grid down situation, folks that need to be able to communicate can connect, as an example, through Boyette or Verna. But we'd like to take that even further. And so this backbone network, this over-the-air amateur radio frequency WAN, will provide that level of resiliency. Now, a lot of people think amateur radio is free. I'm not one of them, because I know better. Amateur radio is not free. And in order to finance such an endeavor, we are in the process right now of trying to find some grant money to go get that done. I will tell you that to build the network out as we have envisioned it will be a six-figure cost. It's not inexpensive. But when it's done, we literally could take the entire NXDN network as it currently exists off of commercial circuits. It will be that good. So that's something we're currently working on. And in addition, one of the other things that we've already implemented is a virtual private network over the commercial circuits that we do use. So short of those circuits failing completely, we are on our own private network right now. Now, we talked a little bit about end user radios, and we've done that in the past. This is the F2100DS. Great radio, 128 memory channels, 5 watts of power, and I'm going to key it up right now, and I'm not sure if you can hear the radio, but I'll tell you what, we'll put the mic next to it, and that way you can hear just how good this radio is. Great audio. And I'll tell you what, the 5 watts out of this radio really shines, even when you're mobile inside your car, even without an outside antenna. But if you connect the radio to an antenna that's mounted on your roof, my goodness, 5 watts goes a lot farther than you might think it goes. At the same time, there is a higher power mobile radio that you can use mobile or base called the F6130D. And if you equip that with an optional OPC 2078 cabling unit, you can actually turn that 6130 not only into a voice radio, but also into a digital data and messaging radio with our Weather Message 2 software. So lots of great options there. The 6130D, by the way, can operate up to 45 watts of power. Now, if the budget is a little bit less restricted and you can afford something even better, The F4400D S and DT, great radio. And it's got built-in GPS. It has built-in Bluetooth in case you need to connect to something else or connect the radio to a computer with a Bluetooth digital link. Again, it's got 5 watts. One of the real benefits of the 4400 and its big brother, the 6400, is the number of memory channels. The F2100, the F6130 have 128. The F4400 and the F6400, and Daryl just brought his F6400. Well, and there's one other benefit you haven't explored yet, I'll bet.
No.
The 4400, like the 6400, can also be outfitted with personalized custom channel change announcements. So as you go from channel 1 to channel 2 and channel 3, it doesn't go 1, 2, 3. It goes Boyette, Verna, Seminole. And it's very easy to program, and the software that you need is, at least the app that I use, is something called Goldwave that you can get a license for about $25. It's really good, really cool, and it turns text into speech. But if you've got, a favorite voice or something, you can record that, put that in as well. One of the other things that you can do with the 4400 and 6400 real easily is connect them to a computer via a USB cable. And in fact, that's also one of the other benefits of those two radios. They can be programmed with a USB cable, no custom uber expensive cable necessary. Now, there are other manufacturers out there in NXDN. As we've mentioned in the past, Kenwood and ICOM, way back in 2004, as a joint venture, created NXDN. And that was in response to an FCC report and order for Part 90 radios, that's land mobile commercial, for something that works at 6.25 kilohertz, 4800 baud, and FDMA modulation. That's what the FCC laid out in a document that they released in 2004. That's what they wanted for Part 90. Kenwood and ICOM came up with a radio, and the rest is history. Now, since that time, and relatively recently, in addition to JBC, Kenwood, and ICOM, we've had a couple of other manufacturers get into NXDN. Alinco has been in it for a while. In fact, I recall one of our good friends, Ed Allen, who's now a silent key, got his hands on an Alinco NXDN radio that was built for Part 90 use 7 years ago. That's how far back they've been in it. Recently, the Chinese have now gotten into it with both Anytone and BTech coming out with NXDN radios. Now, there is a caveat. If you're wanting a radio that can do the messaging, do the voice, do the GPS in NXDN mode, you want the ICOM. Unfortunately, with NXDN, the only thing that is common among all of those radios is voice. Kenwood decided to go their direction with other things digital, like texting and data files and GPS. And the Anytone and BTech radios go way off the reservation in terms of being able to support those things. In fact, somebody had an Anytone radio in their hand the other day when we were transmitting a digital message using Weather Message 2, and it came out as Chinese hieroglyphics. So unless you're conversant with the Chinese character set and you can read Chinese, I'm afraid you buy an Anytone radio, It's got great voice quality, but that's about where you are going to be with that radio. Now, programming features. How many of you have ever done a net when more than 2 people try to check in at one time? And you know, if you're an analog, what you hear is a loud squeal in all likelihood and a lot of other gibberish. That's called heterodyning. And it's been around in the analog world for, well, since forever. In the NXDN world, however, when 2 or more stations try to check in at the same time, all you're hearing in the background is a Simon and Garfunkel song, The Sound of Silence. Because what ends up happening is in digital mode, those radios cancel each other out. You might hear the front end of the first one and the tail end of the last one, but everything in the middle where both are transmitting will just get wiped out. It will be the sound of silence. To try and prevent that, one of the features that ICOM has in all of their NXDN radios is something called Lockout. And you'll find it in the memory channel zone section of the radio. So you go in, you program a memory channel, and one of the columns is called Lockout. It's typically off by default, which means that you can transmit anytime you want, no matter what's on the air, who's on the air, or how important it is. And if somebody else is on the air, you're probably not going to be heard. But if you set the lockout for that channel to busy, the radio will sense that there is already a carrier on the frequency, and instead of getting the beep beep that you normally get on a transmit request to talk, you'll end up getting beep, 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 beep. 5 beeps in rapid succession, and you won't transmit. Thus, whoever got there first is going to be heard. You're going to have to be a little more patient. You'll be number 2 or 3 or number 27, whatever the case happens to be. But it does work, and it's certainly something that I encourage every operator to set up on their radio memory channels. It's called Busy Lockout, and it will prevent people from piling up, and it will, if you're a net control operator, make things a whole lot neater and orderly. RX group is another function that you will find in all of the ICOM radios. Now, if you've set your radio up to use what's called selective squelch, then you're also likely going to want RX group if you're going to want to hear other things that may be on that memory channel. Let me just press a couple of buttons here. Now, there's 3 levels of squelch with NXDN. There's no squelch at all, which means it's carrier squelch, same way it would be in an analog channel. There's RAN squelch. RAN is short for radio access number. There are 64 of them. And what RAN does in NXDN mode is the same thing that a PL tone does for an analog radio. You have something that is silent, it's in the background, but if you're set up to only open the squelch on your radio with RAN 1, which is what we use on the network, if somebody transmits RAN 5, well, that's just not going to open the network. You're not going to be able to hear them. And you're not going to be able to transmit into a repeater unless the repeater is programmed to do that. With NXDN, there is another level called selective squelch that then also allows you not only to squelch your radio based on the RAN code, but also to squelch your radio based on the incoming talk group ID, or in the case of an individual call, which is something that you can also do with NXDN. So if I want to call Buddy here, and I only want to talk with Buddy, I can issue an individual call, and if Buddy's radio is set up on selective squelch, only Buddy's going to hear me. Now, when you use RX group, in the analog world, we'd just scan between memory channels. You can't really do that with NXDN because it's not a continuous tone like a PL tone. It is a byte of data in the header packet, which is the first packet of every voice packet. So if you miss the header packet, if you were doing a regular scan like you would with an analog channel, well, by the time you come up on that memory channel or that repeater, and if you've missed that header packet, your radio's still going to remain silent, even though it might be a match, because you missed that byte of data. And until that byte of data vis-a-vis a new header packet comes along, your radio is going to go, I don't know what you're talking about. With RX group, you can program up to 8 other talk groups so that they will be heard even though your memory channel may be programmed to use talk group 1200. Now, in the real world, here's how that works. If you've set up the RX group in this particular zone to be able to open your squelch with talk group 1200 and talk group 1299, well, your radio, by definition, is going to be able to decode 1200. But 1299 is a completely different talk group. And because 1299, at least here in West Central Florida, is for Skywarn, that's something you want to do. So that's the power of RX group. Again, you program that in the zone section, and then it brings up a second window when you go to turn it on, and it allows you to populate that table with talk group IDs that you've already put into the call list of your programming profile. Very easy to do, and it really expands the capability of selective squelch. Now, if you have one of the older radios, or if you have a memory channel set up with RAN squelch only, yes, you will hear the other talk groups that have transmitted on that particular frequency or that particular memory channel. But you hear everything. You can't be selective about it. So RX group is the better way to go. You've heard me mention weather message. One of the things that you can do with NXDN, in addition to voice, is send digital messages. You've got to have some software to be able to do it. And Weather Message 2, which is our new product, we've added some improvements to it. Weather Message 2 is the way to get it done. You can load it up on your Windows computer, connect a radio like the F62D, even one of the older F4161 DSs or DTs, or the older F6061, and certainly you can do this with the F4400 or F6400, and that will be your gateway to the NXDN network. Now, why did we create Weather Message? Well, number one, we wanted to be able to keep track of the stations that are on frequency, both voice and data, and our station list on the left-hand side does that very nicely. At the same time, we also want to be able to communicate as efficiently as we possibly can. Now, if I pick up a radio and I turn to talk group 1299, I key it up and I say, there is a severe thunderstorm warning for Hillsborough County until 6:30. That just consumed about 8 seconds of airtime. Whereas with weather message, you can do the same thing. You can create a message that says severe thunderstorm warning, Hillsborough County, expires 6:30. And you know how much time it takes to transmit that message? Want to guess? Anybody?
Quarter second.
How much?
Quarter second?
Yeah, a quarter of a second. So in the same time that you could issue that message verbally, think about it. 8 seconds versus a quarter of a second, you could do 32 messages. Yeah. Now that's being proficient. The other neat thing with weather message, we've gone to some considerable trouble to come up with the ability, when a message is displayed on the screen, to use the de facto National Weather Service color schema. Now, some of you may have seen it if you use an app like GR Level 3 radar with the warnings. You know that severe thunderstorms are in red, tornadoes are in magenta, special marine warnings are in cyan, anything having to do with flood is in some shade of green. Well, we've done the very same thing with weather message. So, a regular message will just be black characters on a white background. But if it's a severe weather message, and it's been properly formatted, which is real easy to do because we've added that to weather message 2, it will come out in the appropriate background color. And if it's a dark background color, we know that black characters don't work, so weather message 2 has the ability, for instance, if you're using a dark green, to change the characters to white. Makes it real easy to read. And by doing all of this, that warning message or advisory, or maybe it's a watch, it bounces off the screen right at you. You know this is something you need to pay attention to. At the same time, one of the other things that is also now available with new weather message 2, can't use it yet until we put the new flxNet out there, but once we do, you will be able to start and stop a dynamic talk group with weather message. We make it really simple to do. There's simply a pull-down menu. You select the talk group you want to be on, and it's done. When you're finished using that dynamic talk group, you just go back to the menu, you click on it again to uncheck it, dynamic talk group is history. Like I said, we've made it easy. One of the other things built into weather message 2 is a table of frequently used messages. So instead of having to type out away from the computer, or I'm busy now, or I'm on the phone, or I'm taking a break, instead of having to type that out every time you want to send that message, you do it once, you put it into a database table, and then by pressing a keystroke combination, in this case it's a frequent message, so it would be Control F, you bring up a little window with the frequently used messages that you have created and stored. You select it, hit the send button, done. It works just that easily. And for those of you who are Skywarn spotters, here's another real benefit. What does the Weather Service want us to do when we're reporting a severe weather event? You know, maybe it's dime-sized hail, or maybe it's a funnel cloud, or maybe it's, you know, mucho rainfall, or maybe it's a dust NATO. But what do they tell you? They want to know the time of the event itself, and the location of the event. In other words, it's called the TEL method, time, event, location. So instead of typing all of this stuff in freeform, if you do Control T, it'll bring up a nice little form. The time is already automatically put in there. The location, that you want to type in by hand. The event, there's a whole list of events. So instead of reporting marble-sized hail, which frankly doesn't do anybody any good because we all have different sized marbles, we have in the list penny-sized hail, dime-sized hail, nickel-sized hail, quarter-sized hail. Hail to the chief. You just select the one that you want, it's there, and then any detail that you might want to put in, you can freestyle that, hit the send button, gone. It's been delivered. This afternoon during our 1:30 session, we're going to be showing you some real live stuff with Weather Message 2. Finally, I want to go through the talk groups that we currently have on the network. Every repeater will support the 5 wide area talk groups or repeater specific talk group. Talk group 1, that's for that repeater only. And if you've got 14 repeaters like we currently have, literally every one of those repeaters could be tied up with a different conversation, a different QSO, a different purpose, and they wouldn't interfere with each other. On the other hand, because ham radio is a lot of one-to-many, you may want to talk to people on all 14 repeaters at one time on talk group 1200. If you're doing something like Weather Message, we've set up a talk group 1250 to do that. We've already mentioned Skywarn. This is for the National Weather Service Ruskin office. Now the folks up in the villages, because the villages is a very unique place. It's built across 3 counties, Lake, Sumter, and Marion. Okay, well that's not a big deal, except it is, because those county boundaries are also National Weather Service office boundaries. So the folks in Sumter County get everything that they get from a weather standpoint from the Ruskin office, whereas Lake County gets all of their warnings from the Melbourne office across the state. And if you're in Marion County to the north, you're under the jurisdiction of the National Weather Service Jacksonville, Florida office. So the folks in the villages are really unique. There's no other place in the country that is subdivided by 3 different National Weather Service offices. It also makes trying to forecast the weather and issue warnings, because we all know that weather doesn't know any geographic boundaries, and certainly not political boundaries. It makes trying to issue warnings a little bit difficult as well. And finally, as we mentioned earlier, 14439 will be the talk group for your GPS information. Now, we have selected subgroups of repeaters that can be used by other talk groups. For example, the repeaters that are here in West Central Florida also have 1201 available. Whereas if you're in the North Florida section or the South Florida section, there is a separate talk group available that only works in those sections. The folks down in Charlotte County have 3 NXDN repeaters in Charlotte County. We've set up talk group 1215 that will activate those 3 repeaters. That's it. It's a subset. We also have some dynamic talk groups. Originally, it was 1230 through 1233. Then all of a sudden, the folks from the Sarasota Agri-Resources group came along and said, hey, we really need to have something that works with a subset of the repeaters. And so we grabbed at 1231, which in many of your radios is also labeled WCF2, and that lights up the 3 repeaters in Charlotte County, Verna, Laurel, and Lake Placid, as well as Arcadia. Why? Because that's where the Sarasota Agri-Resources group is likely to be operating. SARG is a rural organization. It is designed during emergencies to help the folks in rural Sarasota, DeSoto, Charlotte, Hardee, Highlands County navigate through things like Hurricane Milton. And finally, special events. Well, we've got one coming up 1 month from today, March 28th, here in West Central Florida, the 3rd annual Bike MS Suncoast Challenge. We've used NXDN the last 2 years. We're going to use it again this year on talk group 1233. Last year we used 1231 and we're lighting up a bunch of places where the bikers aren't going to be. Well, why? Well, it was easy. This year, 1233 for the Bike MS Challenge will light up Verna and Laurel because those are the 2 repeaters that cover the course. That will be WCF4 if you already have it in your radio. So if you're going to be part of the amateur radio comms team, make sure you've got your radio program to operate on 1233. As I said, later today we're going to give you all a more detailed look at Weather Message and what it can do. We're also going to invite you to bring whatever issues you've got or whatever questions you've got about NXDN. We're going to focus, this will be a very focused type of presentation this afternoon. So come join us 1:30 in the back room, I believe. Is that correct, Daryl?
No, this room.
Oh, we're going to be in here. So come on back after lunch and we'll go at it again. I think we're just about out of time. Maybe time for one question. Anybody have a question? Oh, come on, I didn't cover it. Yes.
You mentioned at the very beginning of the crisp, clean audio on NXDN versus analog.
Yep.
How about versus other digital system fusion, what is it called, D-Star and DMR2?
Well, I've compared NXDN, other people have compared NXDN to those formats as well as P25. P25, by the way, operates at a faster baud rate. It's 9600 baud, so it gets more data and gets it out there faster. I'm a little bit prejudiced. I happen to think NXDN sounds the best, but a lot of other people who have used those modes, still use those modes, have come back and said, yes, NXDN is the best sounding of all of the digital modes. I guess you can draw your own conclusions if you do D-Star or Fusion or DMR.
D-Star is the oldest. It's got that, I think, JARL.
They were the ones that wrote the protocol. Yes.
Well,
So it wasn't really good, I guess.
actually, the little story about what the JARL they came up with the concept and they wrote the initial, but what you have here in the United States, the JARL did not pass muster and it had to be completely rewritten.
Didn't know that. Thank you.
So, the D-star in the US is different than the D-star in Japan. NXDN, on the other hand, is the same worldwide. So, with that, we will see you back here this afternoon, 1:30. Be here or not be here, but thank you for joining us this morning. And by the way, for those who may be wondering where we are online right now, we're not. It is being recorded, however, and come about the 9th of March, all of this will be available on the ARRL West Central Florida YouTube channel, so you can pick it up again then. Thank you very much.